Ethan had always existed on the edges of things. Not invisible, just quiet. The kind of quiet that made teachers forget to call his name and classmates assume he was fine being left alone. Books, screens, headphones. Those were his shields against a world that felt too loud, too certain about what he was supposed to be. From the outside, his life looked ordinary. A young guy with decent grades, a small circle of friends, and an interest in gaming. But beneath that surface ran a constant, nagging unease. A feeling he could never quite explain, only endure. Something about the way people expected him to act, speak, be. It never sat right. Ethan didn't hate being a boy. He just didn't feel at home inside it. He liked fashion more than he ever admitted. Liked colors, fabrics, the way clothes could express something words couldn't. He enjoyed hanging out, laughing, sharing late-night snacks. But the endless conversations about cars, sports, and proving masculinity left him feeling like an actor stuck in the wrong role. Whenever he tried to examine that feeling too closely, fear pushed it back down. So he buried it. Locked it away. Told himself it didn't matter. Until the night everything shattered. It was past midnight when he left the convenience store, plastic bag swinging from his wrist, streetlights buzzing overhead. He'd walked this route 100 times. He knew it was safe. Or at least he thought it was. He never heard the footsteps behind him. The impact came suddenly, blinding pain exploding at the base of his skull. His vision warped, the world tilting violently as strong hands seized him. He tried to shout, tried to fight, but the strength drained from his body in seconds. The pavement rushed up to meet him and then, nothing. When consciousness returned, it came slowly, cruelly. A sharp light burned behind his eyelids. His body felt wrong, heavy, restrained. Cold metal pressed against his wrists. The air smelled sterile, chemical, like a place where people didn't come to heal, but to be altered. Panic clawed its way up his throat as he opened his eyes. Bare walls. No windows. A single flickering light overhead. Footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the room, unhurried, deliberate. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't random. As Ethan strained against his bindings, one terrifying thought took root in his mind, clearer than any fear he'd ever known. Whoever had taken him hadn't done so just to keep him. They had plans for him. And deep down, in the most unsettling corner of his heart, he felt it. Whatever they intended to do would change him forever. The door groaned as it swung inward, the sound slicing through the silence like a warning. Ethan's muscles locked instantly, his lungs forgetting how to work for a split second. A tall silhouette crossed the threshold, dressed head to toe in black. A smooth mask hid their face entirely, turning them into something less than human, more like a presence than a person. They stopped a few steps away. "So," the figure said, voice distorted and flat, stripped of warmth. "You're conscious." Ethan swallowed hard. His tongue felt thick, useless. What is this?" he rasped. "Where am I? Who are you?" No answer came. Instead, the masked figure circled him slowly, boots echoing against concrete. It felt like being inspected, measured. The silence stretched until it pressed against his ears, making his pulse roar. Finally, the figure spoke again. "You matter more than you realize. But you're unfinished." The words landed wrong. Wrong in a way that made Ethan's stomach twist. "That doesn't make any sense," he snapped, tugging uselessly at the restraints. "Let me go." "In time," the figure replied calmly, already turning away. "For now you stay. We're preparing you." The door shut with a metallic crash, plunging the room back into shadow. Alone again, Ethan stared at the wall, dread pooling in his chest. Whoever had taken him didn't want information. Didn't want money. They wanted him. The days that followed dissolved into something shapeless. He slept, woke, slept again. Meals appeared without warning, tasteless and sparse. No explanations. No names. Just the same chilling reassurance whenever he protested. "You'll understand soon." Sometimes he felt a sharp pinch in his arm when he wasn't looking. Other times, bitterness lingered in his food, metallic and unfamiliar. His body ached constantly, not just from the restraints but deeper, as if something beneath his skin was shifting. At first he told himself it was stress. Then his chest began to ache in a way he couldn't ignore. His skin changed too, losing its roughness, becoming strangely smooth, almost fragile. His hair grew faster, falling into his eyes in soft, unmanageable waves. When he finally caught his reflection in the cracked mirror bolted to the wall, he barely recognized the face staring back. The angles were wrong. The sharpness was fading. His jaw looked softer. His cheeks fuller. His eyes, always tired, always distant, seemed larger somehow, framed by lashes he didn't remember having. "No," he breathed, gripping the edge of the sink. "No, no, no." But his body didn't listen. Each day brought new betrayals. Weight settling where it never had before, his clothes tightening in unfamiliar places, a subtle heaviness in his chest that made his heart race with fear. Whatever they were giving him wasn't temporary. It was deliberate. One night, curled on the freezing floor, shaking despite himself, the sound of the door opening pulled him sharply back to the present. The masked figure returned. This time they weren't alone. A woman stepped in behind them, her footsteps light, deliberate, like she already knew exactly what she would find. Ethan's pulse spiked. Whatever came next, he knew one thing with terrifying certainty. This was only the beginning. Her gaze cut through him before she even spoke. The woman stood just inside the doorway, posture rigid, eyes sharp with a kind of detached intelligence that made Ethan feel transparent. Her dark hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to mirror her personality, controlled, unforgiving. She studied him the way a scientist studies a specimen, not a person. "So," she said at last, voice precise and cool, "the changes have begun." Ethan's throat closed. "Changes?" he echoed hoarsely. "What are you talking about?" She didn't react to his fear. "I know this is difficult," she continued as if reading from a script. "But what's happening is intentional. Necessary." "Necessary for who?" Ethan snapped, panic bleeding into anger. "Why am I here? Why me?" She stepped closer, tilting his face slightly with a gloved hand, inspecting him with professional distance. "Because you were suitable," she said. "Because you had the capacity for adaptation. Not everyone does." Ethan shook his head, breath uneven. "I didn't agree to this. I don't want it. Whatever you're doing, stop. Please." For the first time, something like sympathy flickered across her expression. It vanished just as quickly. "That option passed the moment you were brought here," she replied. "The process is already underway." "The process?" His voice cracked. "You keep saying that like it explains anything." She met his eyes steadily. "You are being reshaped," she said. "Aligned with who you were always meant to become." Ethan recoiled, his restraints biting into his wrists. "No. That's not true. I know who I am." "Do you?" she asked quietly. Her words hit harder than he expected. "You will," she continued, calm and unyielding, "emerge as a woman." The world seemed to tilt. "No," Ethan whispered, then louder, desperate. "That's impossible. I'm not. This isn't." Her expression hardened. "Denial won't change the outcome." His heart pounded violently as memories and sensations collided. His body no longer responding the way it once had, his reflection refusing to look familiar, the subtle but undeniable shifts he could no longer dismiss. Every instinct screamed that something fundamental was being taken from him. Yet the evidence surrounded him, lived inside him. The woman straightened, already turning away. "Resistance will only make this harder," she said. "For you." The door closed behind her with a final, echoing clang. Ethan sat frozen, breath shaking, staring at nothing as the truth pressed down on him from all sides. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't stopping. And no matter how hard he tried to deny it, his body was already telling a story he wasn't ready to hear. The woman retreated a step, giving him room that felt more symbolic than real. "Struggling won't stop what's already in motion," she said evenly. "You'll be supported through the transition. The real uncertainty isn't if it will happen, it's how long it will take before you stop resisting it." Then she was gone. The silence she left behind pressed in from every direction. Ethan sat motionless, the echo of her words looping in his head. Nothing about his life felt familiar anymore. Not the room, not his reflection, not even the way his body responded to him. Control had slipped through his fingers so gradually that he hadn't noticed until it was completely gone. Each passing day widened the distance between who he remembered being and the person staring back at him from the mirror. His hair no longer obeyed gravity the way it used to, falling softly against his neck. His clothes pinched and pulled in places they never had before. His body felt foreign, like something he was borrowing instead of inhabiting. And beneath the fear, beneath the anger, a question refused to stay quiet. What if this wasn't entirely wrong? He hated himself for thinking it. Hated the idea that something forced, something cruel, could align so closely with a feeling he'd never had words for. But the changes were undeniable. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't temporary. There was no rewind. One morning, harsh white light snapped him awake. The room looked cleaner than before. Too clean. Sterile. The door opened abruptly and the woman entered again. This time, her composure was strained, as though something wasn't proceeding according to plan. "You're hesitating," she said. "That's dangerous." Ethan pushed himself upright, heart pounding. "You've already taken everything from me. What more do you want?" His body answered before she did. Tightness in his chest, unfamiliar weight in his frame, the mirror's image burned into his mind. He barely recognized himself anymore. Not fully one thing or the other. Trapped between. "You're standing at the edge," she said quietly. "But you won't cross it." "I don't want this," Ethan shouted, his voice breaking. "I won't be your project." She didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her coat and withdrew a small injector, its contents glowing faintly. "This completes the sequence," she said. "After this, resistance won't matter." Fear surged through him, sharp and overwhelming. For weeks he'd been carried forward by decisions made without him. But now they were watching. Waiting. This was the first moment that truly felt like a choice. His thoughts tangled, anger, grief, exhaustion, and beneath it all, a quiet, terrifying curiosity. What would happen if he stopped fighting? If he didn't define himself by what had been taken but by what remained? Slowly his hand lifted. Not for them. For himself. The moment the injection took effect, warmth spread through him. Not violent, not alien, but deep. As if something long dormant had been stirred awake. His knees gave out and he sank to the floor, breath shuddering as sensation after sensation washed through him. It wasn't just his body responding. It was his sense of self unraveling and reforming. Tears blurred his vision as he realized the truth he'd been running from. The greatest battle hadn't been against them. It had been against the parts of himself he'd never allowed to exist. As the fear loosened its grip, something else took its place. Not certainty, not happiness, but acceptance of the unknown. Ethan closed his eyes. Whatever awaited him on the other side of this change, one thing was undeniable. He was no longer running. And for the first time that didn't feel like defeat. Nothing Ethan had ever imagined compared to the moment he finally stopped resisting. When the struggle drained out of him, something else took its place. Not certainty, not relief, but a stillness that felt strangely earned. The seconds after the injection blurred together, time folding in on itself as his body responded in ways his mind could barely follow. The room felt smaller, tighter, as though the walls themselves were bearing witness to the change unfolding within him. He barely noticed the woman approach again. She crouched near him, her expression carefully neutral, though there was something softer there now, an acknowledgement perhaps that the battle had ended. "You feel it," she said quietly. "The moment you stop holding on." Ethan's breathing was shallow as he looked down at himself. His hands no longer looked like they once had. Finer, unfamiliar, yet undeniably his. The weight of his body had redistributed, every movement carrying a new awareness. And yet the fear that had once ruled him was gone. "What happens now?" he asked. His voice sounded different, gentler, altered, but it didn't frighten him the way he expected. She rested a hand on his shoulder, not as a captor but as a guide. "Now you decide how to live with what you've become. There's no undoing this, but there is choice." He absorbed her words slowly. This wasn't an ending. It was a threshold. "Can I leave?" he asked, the question carrying more emotion than he intended. "Can I have a life?" "Yes," she said simply. "But it won't be the one you lost. It will be something new." When Ethan stood, his balance faltered for a moment before steadying. His body felt unfamiliar, but it obeyed him. That mattered more than he expected. The open doorway ahead didn't promise safety or certainty, only possibility. As he passed the woman, he paused. "Thank you," he said softly. The words surprised him, but they were honest. Then he stepped forward, leaving behind the room, the fear, and the version of himself that could no longer exist. Weeks passed. Ethan became Elena, not all at once, not effortlessly, but deliberately. She learned her new rhythms, her new reflection, her new name. The world didn't suddenly make sense, but it felt more negotiable now, less like something she had to endure. She found work in a small boutique, surrounded by fabrics and colors that once fascinated her from a distance. Now they were part of her daily life. She discovered satisfaction in arranging displays, in noticing details others missed, in creating spaces that felt inviting and intentional. At night, she would sometimes pause in front of the mirror, not searching for who she used to be, but acknowledging who she was becoming. The feeling of being an imposter slowly faded, replaced by something steadier. Her past didn't disappear. She wrote letters. Some went unanswered. Some came back heavy with anger or disbelief. A few carried kindness. Those were enough. One quiet evening, tea warming her hands as city lights glimmered beyond the window, Elena understood something she had been too afraid to consider before. Identity wasn't something stolen from her. It was something she was still shaping. The pain hadn't been meaningless, but it wasn't the whole story either. She had survived change that once felt unbearable. She had learned that becoming wasn't the same as losing. As she looked out at the city, Elena smiled, not because everything was solved but because she was no longer afraid of what came next. The road ahead remained uncertain. But for the first time it belonged to her.